Welcome to Good Faith Reads. I'm your host, Cliff Vaughn, media producer at Good Faith Media. Good Faith Reads is a short podcast released twice a month in which we focus on one of our book authors at Good Faith Media. We've published more than 150 titles under our Nurturing Faith book imprint, and we invite you to check them out at goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore. Today's guest is Harold Bryson, author of Take Time for the Pain, Pilgrimage Through Suffering. Harold is joining us remotely from Knoxville, Tennessee. Harold, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, we will too, and thank you for writing the book, Take Time for the Pain. Tell us just a little bit about what the book is about. I think the title is pretty accurate and descriptive, but in your own words, what's the book about?
Well, let me give you a sort of a brief narrative, and that might give you help about how the book came about. In 1986, in June of 1986, I had been on an expedition for the school where I taught, and I came in after 4 days of absence, and I walked into the house, and I was shocked. I was surprised that all of my furniture was gone. My wife was gone. My children were gone. My wife left me a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I have decided to leave." She left no reason for her departure and no address where she could be found. And that was probably the worst night in all of my life. The absence of my family brought great shock. It brought great disbelief. It brought numbness. It brought pain, hopelessness, and many other feelings. I tried to pray that night. I remember sitting in my chair, getting on my knees, crying out to God that my wife would come back. In my mind, I just felt that the tragedy had not happened. Now, saying that's 1986. For 3 years, my wife continued to remain apart from me with little or no communication. And she decided that she would not coming back because she said she just found that we had grown apart. Well, 3 years, I remember I suffered even more some nights than I did the initial night. I was numb. I could hardly do anything. I continued with my work, but I did it with 2 tracks. On one track, I did my educational material. And on the other track, I tried to say, why God? Why had this happened? What am I going to do? And I remember that in 3 years after that experience, I made a trip to Dayton, Ohio for the seminary. A church there had invited me to do a Bible study, and I kept the engagement. I struggled as I boarded the plane. I really didn't want to go, but I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to stay in an empty house, and so I decided to go. And I went to this church, and they were very nice to me, provided me a wonderful motel room, and told me that they'd pick me up every afternoon at 5 o'clock, and they would have dinner with me, and then they'd bring me back to the motel that night. Well, I spent 4 lonely days in that motel, and about the 3rd day, I became so bored, so troubled, that I decided I needed to get out and do something. So I got outside the motel and walked around, and I looked across the street and a Sam's wholesale place was opening. And I decided that I'd go over there and just look. Well, when I walked inside the building, I heard the voice of Carly Simon singing a very familiar song, "I Haven't Got Time for the Pain." I know that I don't know exactly what she was thinking about when she was talking about her pain, but I did know about my pain. And I did have to take time for my pain. And so immediately I left that place of business and walked across the street and went to my room and sat at a desk and wrote everything I possibly could on pain. I wrote about my experiences. And I realized that I needed to take a pilgrimage on pain. I'd substituted fanciful imaginations for many hardcore realities. I tried to cover my pain by escaping into my work. I drove my pain deeper into my subconscious, hoping that if it went deep enough, I might forget it was there. But the pain remained, and Carly Simon's words, "You have to take time for the pain," lingered in my mind. And this was the reason for the book.
Yeah, you write in the book that hearing her song really catapulted you onto this journey of understanding, pain in general, human pain, your own pain. You talked about how you consulted your own experience, scriptures, academics, you observed people, you had conversations with people. What is something that you learned about pain on that journey?
Well, on the journey, I learned how diverse pain was. I was dealing with, of course, a separated marriage, but I realized there were many people that were hurting physically, suffering from cancer and other illnesses. And I noticed that there were some people that had handicaps, and I knew that their pain started when they got up every morning and when they went to bed. It was a constant pain. Then I began to look and observe the pain, emotional pains that people had, depression, anxiety. I realized that that pain is quite diverse. And that's one thing I really learned about pain, about how diverse it really is.
Yeah, you also talked about how you really wanted to talk with people in addition to really, doing almost a lit review or a literature review about pain. You wanted to spend a lot of time talking with people. And I wonder, can you make some distinctions in conversations you had with people about pain versus conversations with people who were in pain?
Yes, I decided that I would talk with people in pain. I would listen to them and hear their story. Everybody has a story.
Right.
And I began to hear their stories. I began to hear stories of separations, women that left their husbands that had left their spouse, and I realized, hey, they have a lot of the same feelings that I have. And then I talked with people that were suffering from grave illnesses, probably illnesses that would ultimately take their life. But I heard a lot of the same feelings they had that I had. And so I really began to listen carefully to pain. And it is, as Henry Nouwen said, it made me become more of a wounded healer. I could help people better because I had been through the same wounds or felt the same feelings that they felt.
We'll be right back with more Good Faith Reads.
I'm Mitch Randall, CEO of Good Faith Media, and we're proud to announce a Better Way initiative. A better way. People of faith are too often cast as only narrow-minded and fundamentalist. This image is false, so let's not surrender the truth. A better way. This initiative from Good Faith Media will focus people of faith on giving voice to justice, to inclusion, to love. These values define the faith communities so many of us know. A Better Way initiative from Good Faith Media. Go to goodfaithmedia.org and click on Initiatives. There's more to tell.
Welcome back to Good Faith Reads. Today we're joined remotely by Harold Bryson, author of the Good Faith Media book, Take Time for the Pain, Pilgrimage Through Suffering. I'm Cliff Vaughn of Good Faith Media. Harold, can you talk to us about your writing process, whether you had daily goals or whether you faced writer's block?
Oh, yes, I've had all of those. I will say that I had a pilgrimage of learning to write.
Sure.
Different. This book is different from any book that I've ever written. Many of my friends have read it. Many people have read it that I didn't know, and they sent me words about it and said it's probably the best book that you've ever written, because I've read most of your books. This book, what makes it different is that I was not afraid to share my feelings. I was not afraid to share and to confess my negative thoughts. And so there was a time that I wanted to hide all of that. And I guess in the other books that I had written, they were more third-person books. But this book was a first-person book. I listened, and I observed pain more in my eyes and with my ears and with my own feelings. Even a book by Sontag has a picture of people in pain, people hurt in the racial crises, and people in war. And I looked at that book and I said, my goodness, I need to realize that those people are in greater pain than I'm in. But I did have many people ask me, said, what was your greatest pain? Was it the pain of cancer? Was it the pain of divorce? What was your greatest pain? What hurt the worst? And I thought and paused, very much like I'm pausing now. And I came up with an answer, and here's my answer. It hurts. All I can say is when I had cancer, it hurt. All I can say is when I went through a divorce, it hurt. All I can say is that when I had the experience of an alcoholic father, it hurt. So that's it.
Yeah. Did writing about pain illuminate some new path for you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Not only in reading books that I probably would have never read, they brought insights about pains. One book taught me about the pains of different cultures. And I really enjoyed that book. I didn't say much about the book in my book, but it brought me to attention to become even more aware. And I will say that, yes, I learned a lot from reading and listening and even owning my own feelings. That was a big thing to me. In the writing process, sometimes I would not want to. Now, I really shouldn't share my feelings there, but I would go ahead and share them. And I've received nothing but compliments from people who've read the book and said, I appreciate your honesty and transparency.
Yeah. An important note to all of our listeners, we at Good Faith Media are always accepting book proposals. Our authors engage with an experienced team of editors, designers, and marketers to produce and sell books on a variety of topics. If you have a book proposal you'd like to run by us, head on over to goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore for more information. Harold, I wonder if you have a favorite passage from the book or a passage that you think is particularly critical that you could share with us right now.
Well, Cliff, that's a very hard question you just asked. It's the matter of selecting, and I have selected my own favorite, and I will share with you some of the, on page 90, when I talked about when numerous distresses come into my life, a marital breakup and 5 cancers, I could think of only of one thing: that's bad. But as I walked the road of pain and read scripture, talked with people in pain, engaged in introspective thinking, the bad things began to take on profitable experience. Okay, and then there's one, this is my favorite, it really is, and it is the conclusion of the book, but you can ask me other things. I'm not going to just quit because I'm going to give a remark at the conclusion of the book. I wanted to close my book, and I didn't know exactly how to do it. And I said, I'm going to change it on Christian hope. How do I have a final word about pain and suffering in this book? Paul provides a good closing. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory to be revealed to us. The believer's earthly existence will be a body subjected to disease and decay, but the believer's future will be given a new body and a perfect world in which to live. The magnificence of God's future glory will greatly surpass the unpleasantness of our suffering in this present world. Pain today, perfection tomorrow. That's the greatest help I know.
Last question. Did you ever have bouts of pain that were especially difficult for your faith to reach? In other words, your pain was so great that you just couldn't hardly muster a prayer or read a verse or something like that.
Well, I think that in my prayer life, I expected God to answer if I had just had enough faith, he would answer my prayers. Mm-hmm. And I remember one night, Cliff, that I was sitting in my chair, 3:00 in the morning. I noticed the clock, and I had been praying for my wife to come home. She'd been gone for about 4 years, and I was praying for her to come home. And I said, God, why don't you answer my prayer? And then I really don't know what happened to me, but I was stunned. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't see a vision. But I thought about it. What if she doesn't want to come home? And so a lot of things we want to happen, other people don't want. And so that's, yes, my faith has been challenged in almost every suffering I've been through. When I observed my mother going through years of Alzheimer's, I just, why God, this wonderful woman, why in this condition? Yes. The why question was always with me.
Yeah. Our guest today on Good Faith Reads has been Harold Bryson, author of Take Time for the Pain, Pilgrimage Through Suffering. The book, along with more than 150 other titles, is available as both a print book and ebook at goodfaithmedia.org/bookstore. Harold, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to share my feelings.